king rules forever, my son.
Yo, what's up everybody? It's your boy Zeals back yet again with another video. 5 days in a row, boys. So I'm back, and today we have the weekly update with the 2 new events. So we'll talk about that, the rewards quickly, and then we'll dive into the main course, the entree, which is going to be the Ruin Aura. You've been asking, you've been patient, boys, and today I will deliver and explain the Ruin Aura. I'll do some fights against the infamous Pollution Aura that I showcased yesterday, how I fare against that, as well as the Rainbow and a little bit of GVE, as well as Redemption as well. Alright, so I'm going to showcase everything I can. Today I have a little bit more time to spend making this video a little bit better. It is Friday night here, so I'm going to spend a little more time editing. So that's how it's going to be today, boys. All right, so let's get into this week's event rewards. We have again the casino event, right, as well as the shelter mission as you know it. If you're a free to play or monthly card player, if you can at least do 1 or 2 loops in the casino event, it's going to help you out a lot in getting that 80 orbs per month, that goal you need to set for yourself, or at least try to. And in order to get 80 orbs, you can check out the video in the link above to see how I do it every month to get to your 80 orbs per month for that profit orb event. To do 1 loop, casino event is going to help you. Even if you can do 1 loop, really add up for a free to play or monthly card player in getting that 80 per month. And we'll talk about the reward in just a second. As for the shelter mission, I'm gonna be frank and honest with you guys. These rewards, if it was offered back in the September of 2017, boys, it would have been really good. But in today's endgame meta, it's not that great. But if you're transitioning, if you're a beginner, I do welcome some of these heroes, so we'll talk about that. So let's get into the casino event reward, which is Karim. So Karim is an Abyss hero. He's an assassin, and he is a hero that does have his own perk. We'll talk about that momentarily. What happened with the enable change? Basically has more HP. So the base HP has increased. That's gonna make him, or mostly in the assassins, they've got a little bit more than other classes. So it's going to, of course, help in where he does excel, which is going to be the Aspen dungeon. If you have no other alternatives, like if you cannot get a 10-star Valkyrie or an E1 Valkyrie, which is kind of enough to hit Hell Aspen, if you don't have those 5 or 6 copies, even if you are using your orbs in the Forest Hero as a new player, then Karim, maybe you can capitalize on getting some copies of him as well for the Aspen push. And when does he kick in? He does kick in starting from 9-star when he does gain that 3rd passive. So when he does his basic attack, however much damage he does, right? So 130% of attack damage, he'll suffer 45% of the damage. So he's the only hero in the game where the amount of damage he does will heal him. So his basic attack starts to heal him from 9-star. So you'll notice a power creep or a power spike in the Aspen dungeon, and he can get you up with the crit stone with any damage reduction artifact. You don't have to pay for or use an exclusive event artifact. You don't have to use a paywall or pay to win artifact. So Karim in 9-star to 10-star state, he can get you to Nightmare, and him in E3 can get you to Hell. But like I said, if you can get a Valkyrie, it is much easier. But if you don't have one, then Karim is another alternative if you really want to get to Nightmare, at least to maximize the output from the Aspen Dungeon, which does synergize with Casino Vent, as the higher you clear an Aspen Dungeon, you have more access to purchases from the vendors. So Karim in the early game, if you have at least 3 copies, he will help you to get towards Nightmare, and once you 10-star him, then it will of course help you to get to Nightmare, at least if you don't have Valkyrie. Alright, so that's Karim. In terms of PvP, he's not bad. It's just that in Abyss, there are way better options to choose from. There are more modern heroes that have built-in damage reduction as well as CC immunity, and they do have more consistent results. So yeah, Karim is not bad in the transition meta. I know he does have an attack steal. I know he has a snowball effect, but in order to get into the snowball, right, you need to have the rest of your teammates doing a lot of work for Karim to kick in. And is he going to be out of CC by then? Is he going to be alive by then? That is the question that affects his consistency. Alright, so let's move on to the Shelter event. These heroes are not bad. I would not advise getting Gurki or Dark Arthindel. If you want to know more about Dark Arthindel, even with the enable changes, DA Dark Arthindel, she's not going to move up a tier in PvE or PvP right now, but she did get a minor base HP buff, and Gurki, he did get a little bit more. But Gurki in PvP, he is just way too slow. But if you do build him as a free-to-play or a monthly card player, you have no access to Belrain or other great light heroes, then yeah, he is an option. If you want to build that light hero, then he's not going to be bad in PvE, because he does give 3 allies the holy damage buff, which is a 25% holy damage buff. It lasts 15 rounds. It is a permanent buff. Not only that, it does stack, so it does help your overall team very well. Alright, but in PvP, he's way too slow to kick in. His damage isn't that great. There are just way better light options in GVE, Rainbow, as well as Redemption. So sadly, that's the case. And he has no CC immunity as well as damage reduction built in. He's not that kind of a modern hero, and he is the slowest hero in the PvP meta or entire game. As for our boy Iceblink, even with the base HP buff, he's just not gonna cut it. He's way too slow even with the speed stone, and his just toolkit, it's not good enough, right? His CC is only 33% chance, and that's not really a lot in today's meta. That's the only thing he has for him. He does not have a lot of damage like scaling abilities. So Iceblink is just, there's way better slot 1 options as well for his second passive to really kick in, which is an attack reduce as well as ramping up his attack. As for Shadow, we have Walter. Walter is pretty much the same state before as well as after the enable changes. He did get some base HP buff because he is an assassin. Don't be fooled by the 100% attack. It is a backline hitting ability, and it only stuns 1 target. Alright, so of course in the transitional meta, he is not bad at all because his active does have a 50% chance stun. But like I said about stun, guys, there are a lot of heroes that are stun immune. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but in today's meta, in the PvP aspect, right, there are lots of heroes with CC immunity, and there are lots of heroes with the stun CC immunity as well, and there's that lucky candy bar artifact. So Walter in PvP, he's not gonna really have his full toolkit in effect, especially that stun lockdown. It sounds great on paper in the transition in the beginning. Yeah, he does do a lot of damage and he can lock down your opponents, but once they do transition into the end game heroes and meta, Walter does fall off a bit there. As for Dentalian, he's probably going to be one of the best heroes in the Shelter event along with Rosa. So Dentalian, he did get a little bit more base HP buff, actually a lot more, and the thing about Dentalian is that he is a lot tankier now, and he does synergize pretty well with Cthughaboi. And I do have a Patreon who does have an E3 Dentalian, and he is having some success on his newer transitional meta server. He is just really tanky, but as his server is transitioning into the end game with the end game lineups and heroes, he is starting to suffer a little bit against heroes like Aspen and Horus, starting to appear, of course, Valkyrie as well. But Cthughaboi as well as Dentalian synergizes pretty well, and Dentalian does pretty well as well in Aspen Dungeon. We're gonna see how well he does maybe today or tomorrow when the Aspen Dungeon does reset on his account. I want to see how he does after the enable changes. I mean, he did clear up to hell, but it is an E3. He does pretty well as a new player if you have no other options. I mean, he's not really bad at all, and he will help you do well in campaign as well as those beginning towers against the warrior setups if you don't have enough damage. So Rosa, compared to Emily post the enable changes, is not as good, of course, than Emily, but he is still great in the PvE lineup. He does have that attack buff as well as attack reduce for your opponents, and it will help you out because the PvE bosses are doing a little bit more damage with the precision change as well as the basic buffs to some of these heroes' attack as well as their base HP. So Rosa in PvE, he's going to serve you right. All right, in PvP, nothing's really changed. I mean, he's not gonna really move up or down because he just has a hard time fitting into these auras, and aura is a huge thing with these enable changes where you have to select between attack as well as HP from the tier 1 of the enable selection. So yeah, Rosa in PvP, he's not really gonna move up or down. In PvE, he still has his place. Maybe he's even a little bit more useful. We'll see when the monthly quest does reset and I'm able to step in there with Rosa as well as Kroos and do another assessment again. Alright, overall, for a new player, if you can afford to sacrifice some fodder in exchange for these 4-star armor as well as these heroes, while they may not be the top tier heroes, they will help you as a beginner in the transition meta. So if you're not wheeling out, spending thousands on a new server, these heroes as a free-to-play or a new player will help you get into the game a little bit better. Of course, the 4-star armor will really be OP if you are new as well. So if you can get it without stressing over it, then I'd highly recommend completing the shelter event. All right.
But tonight, we died in hell!
So let's get into the freaking main event for today, which is the Ruin Aura. We're gonna talk about the gear as well as the slot positions and how the overall aura works. And then after that, I'll let you guys see it and I'll just briefly touch up on it after fights, what happened, what worked, what was a key play, things like that. So let's get into the gearing first. Let's talk about Aspen here. So today I tried the 111 in the enable tree. I also tried the 211, the mightiness, and overall, because Ruin does not have any healing and they're overall really squishy. I mean, they're not that squishy, they're in the midline, I guess. They're not too squishy, but they're not tanky either. So I had to go for the 111. It was giving me the best and most consistent results, especially Ruin is having the most issue against GVE. I was going about 50-50 against GVEs, a little bit more sometimes depending on what GVE they were running, but against the harder GVEs it was like a 50-50 depending on if they killed my Mim or not. Alright, so Aspen will be 111. His stone was the Holy Damage Stone, and his artifact, I tried other artifacts like the Antlers Cane and Magic Stone Sword, but I had to go back to the Lucky Candy Bar for the stun immune. Alright, so for the next Dark Faction hero, to complete the 2 out of the 2, I used Mim. So Mim, as for his enabled talents, I had to go with the 111 as well. I tried the 221 and it was giving me some crazy numbers, but it was once again a little bit too squishy. Yeah, with the 111, he wasn't doing as much damage. It did lower his damage by about a third or even a half. But it was more consistent in him being alive, and you need to have Mim alive. It is okay for the rest of your teammates to die except for Mim and Aspen and even Cthughaboi. Alright, so Mim, I found the best results with 111. For artifact, I had to change a little bit. Stone is attack, and for artifact I was using the Magic Stone Sword, I was using the Kiss of Ghosts, the 100% armor break artifact, as well as I even tried Antlers Cane, but I had to go back to Magic Stone Sword because I didn't have the option to reroll this stone because Monkey's account is pretty much dustless right now. He did pump out on Horus today, another E3 Horus, so I just couldn't I didn't have the dust to reroll into a Holy Damage Stone and try other options. So this setup was the best and the most consistent setup for me. I was testing it out for a couple hours and I liked it the best. Sometimes I would of course change it and go back and forth depending on which auras I was having, or I needed more damage from Mim. Having the option to go back and forth was great. All right, so for the main attraction, of course, for the Shadow faction, I used the double Horus. And a lot of people were like asking for a double Horus video, and you know, it's not really easy to do that. He is, I mean, it's not like we have, or I don't have the thousands of dollars to go and fish for him. But luckily, Monkey somehow did get another 7 copies of Horus. I don't know where it came from, but he got it. I'm using the warrior armor set on one of them. I cannot use another one on another Horus because I have to use it on the Aspen. And for both their artifacts, I was having the most success with Augustus Magic Ball, and having over, what was it, like 135% block was really helping. The other Horus has the block and HP stone. Once again, I could not change it to holding damage because of the dust restraints. All right, so I'm limited on the dust on this account. If it was my account, I would have all the gold and the dust in the world to reroll once again for holy damage or attack, stuff like that. But this was not bad. It was working pretty well. Once again, the only Bane that I had issues with was GVE, good versus evil aura, which is 3 light, 3 dark. All right, it's not the most optimal. Of course, I didn't have all the range of stones to test with, but it still worked out pretty well, right? Once again, no king rules all. This is a rock paper scissors meta still, especially with these enable changes. There's so many optimizations and stuff like that. So with this, what we have today, it was doing boss work. And for the Abyss faction, I chose Cthughaboi as well as Kroos, because not only did I not have other options, but it did make sense. For Kroos, of course, it was a speed stone, and for the enable tree, I was using the 3-1-1. So for the speed as well as the 1-1, yeah, I mean, I don't really need the HP on Kroos. I want him to activate into 50% a little bit faster depending on some auras that I was fighting against, especially against the pollution. I want him to get there faster. Against Rainbow, I don't want him to get there that fast. So it really depended on what I was fighting against. For gearing, I used 2-piece Priest and 2-piece 5-star. I was just playing around with what the best HP would be, and overall this was great. Of course, I could use the 6-star armor as well, but I just didn't see the need. This was just the middle ground that I liked, and I used the energy artifact to get the ball rolling a little bit quicker. It also helped Horus' second passive ramp up as well. And people are reporting about the attack portion only modifying the base attack. And yeah, it is a problem, but I think they kind of intended that without announcing it. We'll talk about that more later on in another video when we do discuss the PvE aspects. But in PvP, Horus and Aspen, they're still freaking deadly, guys. All right, they're still monsters in their own right. Anyways, the enable talent, I'm using the 2-1-1 on one of them, as well as a 1-1-1. I'm just trying it out. It's working out pretty good, but if I had to choose, I'd probably choose 1-1-1. I don't really see the need for going 2-1-1. There's just plenty of damage that I'd rather have more survivability, because I'm having issues where they're flopping way too quickly sometimes. Once again, when I do have more dust to play around with it, then I can play around with it a little bit more and get back to you with the revised version of this Ruined Aura. Now, the big player that I kind of underestimated was Cthughaboi, and let's see his build. He is 2-1-1. I didn't really see the need to go 1-1-1 because of the amount of Valkyries that I was fighting against today. Of course, GVE does not have Valkyries, but Rainbows as well as Pollution and Redemption, Cthughaboi was usually the highest HP target, right? And if he weren't, then basically the rest of your team, I'm going to explain this during the fight, what's going on. But basically, even with this setup, he has enough HP because of the way I had set up the gear. I used the 2-piece Ranger with the 2-piece 6-star setup, and I dropped it because I just didn't see the need of having that much HP. And even with the full Ranger setup, I was able to go a little bit more offensive, and while maintaining the HP stone as well as the King of Demons. I don't really see it. I could even go a little bit lower and not use all these defensive artifacts and stones, and every time I fight, I keep dropping his defenses because he was able to still soak Valkyrie's damage. I'll show you during the fight why this is the case. And of course, the higher HP he has, the sooner he does that. But this was a fine middle ground for me, and I want to just keep him here. there, and he was doing a lot of damage. Of course, he does scale with Horuses, the 2 Horuses, to ramp up his damage because his active skill has a bleed component. So Cthugha did a lot of damage with that as well. He wasn't just sitting there, and I could not use him in slot 1, of course, because I was using Horus. We'll talk about that. But even in slot 3, Cthugha was doing enough damage and pressure while also soaking up Valkyrie's damage and helping the rest of the team. It was really beautiful synergy. We'll talk about that, and you can see for yourself during the fight. All right, whew, that's a lot of talk. So let's look at the lineup. Let's look at the positioning. So I had the Horuses in slot 1 and 2. It doesn't really matter as long as Horus is in slot 1. And those Horuses taking damage, well, you can see it. You can see how he just melts the freaking opponent's team. It's beautiful. Of course, there are fights. Like I said, not one king rules all, boys. That's the theme of today. And yeah, there are comps that can bypass that. They can bypass the Horuses, and that is going to be GVE. Like Omnivore and Faithfully, they just don't give a shit where they target. It's random. So sometimes they're not going to hit Cthugha or Horus, right? I mean, yeah, they have 1 in 2 chance to do that, but they don't really care. They don't have to go through the slot 1 options or slot 3 or backline targets. So I had more issues with the good versus evil because of that factor. So for Cthugha, I had to put him in slot 3, and he was, like I said, he was doing enough damage there. Kroos in the back line, and he's fine. You don't really need to slot him in slot 1. I know there's a lot of heroes that benefits from being in slot 1, but actually this worked out pretty well, and I'm sure people will find a counter to it, and that's the whole point of the rock, paper, scissors. Aspen, he is stun immune, so he's in slot 5 sitting comfortably, and Valentino has nothing to say about that. And we have Mim in slot 6, and he is of course CC immune, so Mim is there, right? All right, so let's get into the fights, and I'll just let you watch it, and we'll talk about what happened and how it all synergizes during the intermissions. All right, enjoy the fight. Be right back. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed some of these fights. I couldn't include all of them. I did go on like a huge winning streak, but this is a fight against Redemption, and I want to show you how this whole team on the left side, the Rune Aura, how they work together. Alright, so Cthugha's role that I wanted to explain further earlier on is that as you are fighting these double Valkyrie Redemptions or triple Valkyrie Pollution teams, or even Rainbows with Valkyrie of course, your teammates will of course take lots of damage from Valkyrie's basics as well as mostly from Valkyrie's actives, right? That's where the bulk of the damage will come from for Redemption as well as the Pollution triple Valkyrie team. However, while your teammates do drop in health, Cthugha will maintain high HP as you are seeing now, and he's going to act like a sponge, not a healer, but like a sponge effect for the Rune Aura. So after your ally heroes do fall below Cthugha's HP, then Cthugha will be able to soak most, if not all, of the Valkyrie's actives. As long as they do land on him, he's going to just shrug it off because he is immune to the burn effect. So effectively becoming a sponge for the rest of your heroes to catch up in terms of being being able to unleash their actives or come out of CC to create more pressure. So it's buying the Ruin Aura some time by using Cthugha. So yeah, I just wanted to explain the whole synergy behind that. And if you have any questions, leave a comment below. Alright, that's going to wrap up today's video. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I have in making it. If you want to support my journey and help give back to the community with giveaways, make sure to join the exclusive Patreon family. Thumbs up, sub up, share it up, and see you guys very shortly. Peace.
Let's go.